Hi, everybody. Welcome back to CSUN Performance Ensemble Presents a Conversation with. I am not Jefferson Denham, and I am not Samantha Garcia until they come back. I'm your only host for today, and I am super excited because after what seems like a whole century, we finally get to invite one of our favorite people. Our guest today is Mark Farrell. Mark Farrell, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Hi. That's. I feel like you've built this up. um, I am a CSUN graduate student. Well, ex-graduate student. Well, graduate students. I'm still finishing up my final paper, but in communication studies, and a member of the CSUN Performance Ensemble, which I've been kind of severed from for a while through my own isolation. But I'd like to. I'm back actually talking to Fernando, which is awesome. I what else? What else would sum me up as a package? See, I love I love performance. I like communication studies a lot. I like linguistics a lot, but performance really it really synced with what I've loved. I've always felt like I've been too nervous to go onto stage, but I love narrative. I love storytelling. I think it's one of the most effective forms of not just communication, but communion in a sense. And this was the perfect balance of what communication studies field had to offer with the world I came from, which the world of mostly visual storytelling, film and sequential art. But that I guess I could go on into minutia, but that might just muddy the waters. I'm a CSUN graduate student that wants to stay in touch with my performance roots. I guess we'll talk about what the transition was like, but I actually love performing now. It was a bugbear for me. I couldn't. I my nerves seemed overwhelming, and my time at CSUN is now. Whereas a performance that came from me before would be individual, and I felt more comfortable filming it. I almost can't do that now. It's almost like I've tasted the power of an audience, and it's pretty good back.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll get into a lot of that too. 'Cause I mean, I feel like you touched on a lot of things that are super interesting that we can unpack. But before we get to that, I sort of wanted to preface this show or this episode at least with that we're sort of catching up to the times, right? So we've been in lockdown. We've been on lockdown since March 13th, I believe. Right, so it's been what, 7 months, an insanely long 7 months, um, and a lot has changed. And I think that for a lot of us, some of these things I, I feel like we've put a lot of focus into some things over others, right? In terms of how it's going to change and how it's going to affect things. So like we think about online schooling, we think about work from home for a lot of businesses where it turns out you can do a lot of work from home. But I think that one thing that we haven't really thought about was how do we do things like performance from home, right? And um, anybody that listened to our show last week, Sam and I talked just amongst ourselves about just viewing performance and directing it from an outsider's perspective, because at that point we were no longer a part of the performance ensemble because we had graduated and sort of moved on, right? But we were able to witness it from the outside in. So I saw how things were when they transitioned from in-person to online. But obviously that doesn't account for it as good as having somebody who was actually a part of the ensemble during the transition, which, was you, Mark. And which is why we were so excited to have you on for this week, was just because you got to experience PE for the first time in your life, right? So the first time in your academic career. And it's so unfortunate the first semester that you get to experience that is the same semester that we transition to online learning. Because for me at least, it feels like it robbed you a lot of some of the experiences that you could have potentially had in the ensemble. But I also feel like it gave you a new experience. And so I think the first thing that I want to talk about, maybe it's just for some context, because you brought it up a little bit. It's like, how did you end up joining PE? Because I know that you weren't necessarily like you weren't involved with it yet, at least not in the context of school, right? So like, how did you end up joining PE and why?
That actually came down to a conversation. Well, it was two things. Jade came to one of our classes in core part two, and just gave an awesome presentation. And I was like, I want to take that class. So I was already there, gravitating in that direction. And then I had a talk with Dr. Kephart, and I was talking about how I was interested in visual rhetoric, and I wanted to tie our studies back into my past. Like I said, I'm into illustration, and I like the visual aspect of rhetoric. And you know, he basically said, well, you know, that's under the umbrella of art, and performance studies is pretty much where you're going to be able to express yourself artistically in communication field and in the communication field. And he encouraged me to join it. And so I took two performance classes that semester, and one was theory and one was the autoethnographic class. And then, or this was the last fall semester. Then the following semester, I was offered the position of the assistant. So I was actually the TA, I guess I was TA assistant. I was the lieutenant, I guess you'd say. Marianne was like who I looked to for what to do. And, but part of that was participating in the class. And now I do regret not having enrolled in the class, but I was participating without being enrolled, but that was, I find, and in retrospect, absolutely necessary. And it was a great experience. And I was looking forward to the final performance after having seen The Caged Bird. I was like, you know, I remember seeing you in that performance, and someone who was still just getting to know you, and someone who I thought was really quiet and really reserved, and to see you up there performing and giving yourself voice, it was awesome. And I was like looking to that experience as a model for what I was expecting for my own. And yeah, that was kind of disappointing, I guess. But I'd have to say that was the main disappointment, was to have the final project be snippets on film, which did turn out really cool. But I was looking forward to being in real time with the actual class, with the ensemble in front of an audience. I was scared, but I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think that you know, I feel like it kind of sucks to say like, oh, you know, just mentioning the fact that it, to me at least, it felt like you lost something, like you lost part of the experience. But I mean, you also gained something different that other people don't have, or like even people now that are that walked into performance ensemble this fall semester knowing that the whole thing was going to be online, you still have a different experience than they do. And I think that's something to learn from. But I think that a quick follow-up, or one, a comment, and two, a follow-up question was, I find it interesting that a part of the interest came both due to our director presenting something, right, but also a conversation that you had with a professor in the department who has nothing to do with performance at all. Like,
Yeah.
And you know, with all due respect, is somebody that you think of as the complete opposite of like performance art. And it's not to say that it's a bad thing or anything, but it's just like completely separated from it. So that's really interesting. And yeah, and it's interesting too because as you mentioned, you were a TA, and which essentially means that you were just an assistant director for the piece, right? Because that's technically the role that you had.
Mhm.
Walking into it, I guess, because you got to experience PE pre-COVID for a month and a half.
It was rad. Yeah.
Yeah, what were those experiences like, I guess, during that first month and a half, as both as a student and as a TA for performance?
Well, remember I was talking about how I used to only be able to perform in front of a camera because I was so nervous to get up on stage. I had stage fright like crazy. I was actually in a performance piece at Moore Park College about 30 years ago when I was younger, in my first round with education before going out into the workplace and coming back. But I was on stage in a performance a piece about, it was a environmental, you know, progressive type theme. And I had to engineer my performance to, I pre-recorded my voice and had it played through a flanger and an octaver, so you couldn't even tell it was my voice. And then I had a full bodysuit costume of a hazmat suit, and did my piece just by pantomiming. That was about the only way I could get on stage. Now I don't want to do that because it blocks you from the audience's reactions, and that's what I learned in performance ensemble. was how much support and how much, I guess I want to call it like fuel, you're granted by the audience's reactions. It brings something. It's like when you throw a newspaper on the ground to soak up a spill, and you see the liquid soak up into the newspaper. Almost like the liquid seemed inert and didn't have enough mass to it. But then you realize how far it can spread, and it pulls it out of you. I hope this makes sense. But for me, an audience was like, I didn't realize I had that puddle to be pulled out of me. And through like some form of capillary action, I had the performance drawn out of me by the audience. And in this case, the audience was our classmates, our classmates. And they, of course, everyone was in the same boat. You know, everyone performed and everyone was in the audience. But that support, that reaction, I guess, and knowing that in real time people are kind of feeling and experiencing what you're projecting, it pulls it out. Like it, for instance, in front of a camera, I would stop. That was imperfect. I would, no matter how hard I try, I would falter and stop and have to go reset the camera and start again, almost endlessly. It was very hard to just go straight. But it's like the audience's presence, I guess the intersubjectivity of the experience, it flows out naturally. Like you know there's no going back. You're not going to go, hold on, let me start over when you're 5 minutes into the performance. And somehow that it's like riding a bicycle. You go too slow, it's hard to stay up. But once you've started the performance with an audience, which is something that I wasn't used to. So when I say that, it was a unique experience, and it was positive. And it was like riding a bicycle fast, where you can take your hands off the handlebars, and it's kind of pulling you through the experience. And I wouldn't say autopilot, but you know what you're doing, and you're following. You're not even overthinking or thinking too far ahead. You're in the moment, and it comes so naturally with an audience. I got that experience. Before the COVID shutdown.
Yeah, and
I'm really
what's
glad.
what's interesting too, though, is it's just for people that don't know, obviously, like when you have something like this, like with PE, because it technically is a class, but it's also a club, right? And most people retake it a handful of times. Like some people were in it for a handful of years, right? What tends to happen too, though, is most people join for about 2 semesters and typically are on their way out already. Like they're usually seniors, and so they stay for a semester or two and then they're out. But there's usually a core group of people that are sort of carry over for a handful of years. And I think that the year that you joined, that core group had all left. Like they either graduated or it didn't fit their schedule. Like they had to worry about other things in order to graduate. And so you also ended up being a part of a group that was completely new. Like because that's the thing, is like I would walk in there on occasions, right? Because like on occasion, like I would walk in there and help you guys out, or just like take care of like the social media stuff and take photos and all that stuff. And I just like didn't recognize anybody. And so I was like, man, not only are you guys doing something different, just because like the themes are different with Jade that semester, but also completely different people. And obviously when things had to change, they changed. And I was like, man, there's so many new things happening here. And so what was that experience like for you, I guess, to pre-COVID, to work with all these people, and which I assume you knew none of, right? Like a lot of these like undergraduate students. Like, what was that like? What was the atmosphere like with the ensemble?
Well, I would say kind of because you were there, and it was a perfect balance of I was nervous and I was shy, and going in, I actually knew a few people. I knew Holden from Moore Park College, you, and I knew Marianne. And when Sam showed up, and Jade, they were familiar faces. Y'all were familiar faces, and that was the perfect balance. It was like I had the majority of the class were all brand new people who it was there. I don't think it's necessary. I was going to say it's underrated. It's probably not underrated, but it's an awesome experience to get to know a whole group of strangers, especially when after like 5 or 10 minutes you realize you're not in a hostile group of strangers. Yeah, college is good like that. It's not junior high school. You're not entering enemy territory like you are in junior high school. But it was wonderful. I mean, it was a perfect balance. I had familiar faces. So like at a party, I had someone to talk to without trying to, if I wanted to, like, I guess, steel myself up to broach the divide of like strangership. I don't know what you'd call it, but getting to know someone. And it was it was all positive, actually. It was fun. It was fun. It was getting to know brand new people. And one of the things about that is there's just no limit to like to different people. You're not, you haven't met that type of person. Just haven't. There's, what is it, 7.5 billion types of people on the planet. So it was fun. It was fun meeting new people, and especially with the comfort zone I was afforded with familiar faces. So for me, it was perfect balance. It was it was all positive. The nervousness was only probably before and 10 minutes into the very first class.
Yeah, I think what's really cool though, and just from like having spoken to all the people that we've had on this show, and just like off camera conversations that we've had with a lot of our friends that join PE, be it for a semester or 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case, or even people that we worked with that aren't a part of PE, right? Because we've worked with people out of state, people out of the city, and all that. Um, I think like the most common thing is like even if they are creative types, like I think that they're always going to walk into this feeling nervous. Like that's just a normal. I think it's just a normal human reaction, right? To walk into something that, um, even if on paper or on text you understand, it's not something that you're going to truly fully understand until you experience. And so you're always going to walk in with those nerves. And I mean, I think it was really cool that at least having those familiar faces helped you out a little bit, walking into a room full of strangers mostly. Um, and so I guess what I want to do next too is just sort of give context to the rest of the conversation post COVID. So when you started that semester, which is the spring of 2020, spring of this year, um, right? Yeah, spring of this year. Um, as we all know, Jade, our director, always gives us this sort of theme, and typically the theme lasts for a year, but sometimes it changes, or maybe the ideas change for the semester. What was the theme or the direction that you guys were given for the spring semester at the start?
It was America broken down into a temporal triptych. It was basically the past, the present, and future, with America as the state of American life, or America in general, American politics, American experience in general. So it basically broken down into where we came from, what we're going through now, and then you had your choice of utopia or dystopian lens to look at it through. As speculating about where we'll be. But I would, yeah, that was what we were going to do, and we had we had three groups, and we were going to have a triptych of acts and then all three groups coming together as a cohesive whole, as segs, I guess, if I'm remembering correctly. That's what it seems like it was, like a seg to unite the entire triptych. But yeah, that didn't. We all ended up doing individual things with. We kind of did recover some of the cohesive wholes as individual, like we put everyone together on the same screen, because it did become a what would you call mediated format as opposed to live performance. But that was it, yeah.
Yeah, and okay, so yeah, so the idea of America, which ended up being the title essentially, right? Like America in 3X is what that show ended up being titled. And so I guess the way that it was working is, like you said, you guys were working in groups because I guess everybody was able to fit under either the past, present, or the future, right? And I guess this question is more specific for you, towards you, because I guess I was wondering, having seen your actual performance during the show, I guess the question that I had is, what were you working on before we were asked to lock down? Like, was that is what you performed in the final show what you were working on before everything changed?
No, it was a far cry. Our group was going to do. I can't remember if we were the present or the future, but it was about. I think it was the future, but we were doing a piece about human contact and how maybe it was the present, but it was about how people have grown apart from like face-to-face contact or even physical contact. Like the experience of touch has been lost in I guess the present or the future. See why I'm confused now, like, because this applies to both times. We're at the advent of that condition where we are growing apart because of digital technologies, but communication technologies at least. But that was the theme for our piece, and mine ended up being kind of similar. It was what I was trying to convey was the separation of people by digital technology, using personal experiences of cell phone interference when you're talking to someone that you are, obviously you're not talking to them because you don't like them, they're your friend or your loved one, and the frustration you feel that can get actually associated with or projected onto the person that you have feelings for because the technology is failing you and coming between you. And the frustration born of that can result in frustration with the other person. Like, can you hear me now? No, you can't. So I tried to couch that as a marriage proposal over a cell phone. I'm not happy with the way it turned out. I can't even watch it. But but it was an experience though. Trying to film it was probably when I learned to hate being in front of cameras. I tried to film it in the Aaronstum. The sound was okay, but just something about it just didn't feel right. So I went to the parking structure and tried to film it on the third level of the parking structure because it was deserted. So it looked kind of, I thought that was a cool effect for a background. But the equipment I had, I didn't have sound equipment. You couldn't hear anything. If you were like more than 5 feet away from the camera I had, it just was lost in the wind. There was the dialogue would be gone. Otherwise, you're in an extreme close-up the whole time. So I did the elevator because I was able to add kinetics to it, which was kind of fun. I've always thought, I always like the mise en scène and the background, costume work, all the stuff that's not part of the performance, because I come from watching a lot of film. This live performance, I'm transitioning as far as my perceptions go over to, I'm loving it, but it's like I come from a thinking of film background. But it was kind of a good excuse to put a moving set in the background in a sense. Is this even on subject still? Am I?
No, you're not. You're right. We were just talking about how it changed, right? Because like you said, it ended up being something completely different, and unfortunately, I guess you ended up not liking how it came out. But I guess that sort of leads me to other questions I had, and just like other curiosities that I sort of wanted to get into is, so clearly, I feel like the chances of people's performances changing were obviously there, right? Especially if we were thinking of doing things that was group work, or maybe doing something in public, because I mean, just the idea of being outside as this was all happening was also, I mean, quite terrifying too, right? Because like there was just so much we didn't know then, because it was all developing. And so I guess my question was, and I guess I'm asking this from the perspective of us teaching, right? Because like you were also teaching in addition to being a student, in addition to being a director, you were also teaching your own class. And so we were both teaching, and obviously the classroom setting changed completely. Like it almost didn't even feel like a classroom to me. So I guess the question I had is, how was that? Was there a change, I guess, in the atmosphere in the classroom for PE specifically?
Oh God! Oh, you mean the atmosphere of?
Yeah, because
after we separated.
After we separated, because I know that like for PE we all meet every Thursday, right? And it's always this like big, just I don't know, chaotic experience of like warming up and just getting ready, and a lot of us just like throwing ideas everywhere and finally getting work done in the last 30 minutes or something. And it's just like this really cool and welcoming and warming environment. At least that's what I think, right? And how did that all change? Like, what was it like to have to communicate with each other, to toss around ideas, doing this online? Like, how was that experience?
The short answer is that just went away. There was no substitute for that. After that, it was just catch as catch can, baling wire and spit kind of thing. Like that's how it felt for me. Like we're throwing stuff together. We're all on Zoom. What can we do with this? The energy was, I don't want to say gone, because it's more like where it's not there in the room, but you have to extrapolate. You have to project it. That person's out there. The person you're seeing on Zoom, you have to kind of struggle to get their energy at a distance. kind of like, daughter photons or whatever. You're like trying to span a distance and achieve effect, at distance with, there's an energy you just can't replace, I guess. I want to add a positive spin to it, but honestly, it was a big loss. It was a huge loss. I mean, but we did what we could and we came through, and it was still a positive experience. It's just that it was the net result was lacking that. There was no replacement for the living energy you get when you're collaborating with people. You're still collaborating with people, I guess. There's something about collaborating in real time, though, and in the same space. I guess the same space aspect is the only one that's really missing, because we're able to do synchronous time where, I don't know, there's something about it. Like, notice we're bordered by these corners. We're in right-angled images, right? We're framed. We're confined visually. We're not part of our world necessarily to the perception of another. There's all sorts of, I guess, subconscious cues that are missing when you're there in real life, and you don't have borders to your vision. It just sort of fades out it progressively fades out until you turn your head and center your focus on a different area. But yeah, dealing with video conferencing and framed images of your collaborators, it's not an adequate substitute. It's still positive, and it's what we have, and it could get better, I guess. It's another opportunity to adapt. But yeah, I hate saying this, but there was a net negative.
Well, that's the thing too, right? Like, I think that I think a part of the experience of performance, or maybe like it's just a lot of things in general, is that some things just, granted this was in the face of something so extreme, right? Of a global pandemic, but some things just don't pan out, and unfortunately there are times where you do miss out or lose out on things, and I guess that's what that experience was like for you. And my other question was, how did you guys, because from what I remember, the ensemble was kind of at least this particular group was kind of big, right? There was like a big number of people in it, especially in comparison to previous semesters. And so how did you guys exchange the actual performances? Like, how did that work out? Did you guys share them with each other, or did you guys not see the performance, like the individual performances, until the end when everything was put together?
You mean as far as the video snippets I didn't see them till they were put together. I mean, I saw mine. That's the only time I saw mine. I watched everyone else's, but then kind of fast forwarded through mine. Looked away. It's hard. I don't know what it was, but I don't know. Yeah, camera is. I learned not to like cameras, but as far as collaboration went, it was minimal. There was minimal collaboration. We had to coordinate the group piece, like where Anthony put together all of us on the same screen, and I believe he probably did all the syncing of that, the synchronizing of our voices. But I don't know how that worked out. But other than that, we were kind of like, we had specifications for what our performance would be, like rough length, format, get it done, turn it in. Like that was kind of, the collaboration aspect was almost absent at that point, which is what I missed. I think I just did find a positive net side of this, is that anyone who was going through this, anyone from this semester or semesters where we'll have to do this for PE, when we do come back, and we will, to being able to socialize again, it's gonna make us value certain things a lot more, and I think it's gonna be a positive. It's gonna be kind of how when you endure something, you benefit from it. It's not fun while you're doing it, but there's something to be gained, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, that's true.
Going back to the last question, but yeah, as far as collaboration, I would say that was, I missed it. I missed the collaboration. Maybe I was doing it differently than other people, but maybe other people were collaborating more extensively than I was, but I missed it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, and I think that what you said is just as valuable as what anybody else would have said, right? Because I mean, maybe that's the case. Maybe somebody else in that show felt that the collaborating aspect wasn't as damaged as it might have been for you or for somebody else, right? I know that for example, granted I wasn't a part of the show, but like I also lost, I wasn't really in contact with that, right? Because like I was obviously focusing on my own things, but maybe for other people it was still there. And I think that's the interesting thing too, is that I mean, it's just the whole experience was just a really weird learning curve. Right? It's just like suddenly you have to learn how to adapt to everything, and how do you adapt performance to something that's online. And this is something that Sam and I brought up last week, is we were talking about the validity of performance, particularly when it's done online, because and I can't remember for the life of me who argued this, but there's this argument that performance is not as valuable, or it's not even considered performance the second that it is done online, as the second that it is mediated in some format, right? And so for your performance to have gone on YouTube, it was like a 3-day special event, right? So like one day you have act one, the second day act two, the next the final day you have act three. It premiered live on YouTube. It was just like everything happening, right? So that's one way that it adapted that I found was really cool.
Mm.
But what I guess I want to know what your thoughts are. It's like you have this person, this academic, telling you, yeah, cool, but performance is no longer performance, or it's valueless because you guys posted it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um,
I
it,
think, oh, sorry.
I mean, I just wanted to know what your thoughts are. Do you feel like maybe some of your pieces, or maybe let's just talk about your piece in particular, right? Like, do you feel like your piece suffered because it went online, or do you think that it could have still had just as strong of an effect as it would have in person?
That's hard to say. For me, I'm not a, I, there's, like, I can, like I said, I had trouble watching myself. It just, makes your skin crawl kind of thing. I'm sure that's not unique. A lot of people experience that, but I assume I don't want to sound like Trump and be like, I'm speaking for everyone. It's fact. Yeah. A lot of people say, but, what I want to say is, it's depends on the person watching it. I would have to guess. Maybe it rang a familiar bell for some people and didn't for others. But as far as like saying that it's less valuable, I can totally get behind it's not performance, because that's just a purely terminological question, like a rose by any other name kind of thing, or does it have to be a rose? Like it's just what you want to call it. But as far as its value, is it less valuable? It's definitely, I think, more challenging for the performer themselves. Like I was saying, the camera, but that's also subjective. That's just how I feel. It's hard to say. Now I'm opening a can of worms, but some people might respond more to mediated images because of it as a positive association with something in their childhood. Maybe they grew up in a nice place with a television set. You never know how someone's going to react to the format that something is presented in. I myself can say that I actually had a hard time seeing live theater when I first started going to live theater. It made me nervous because I was used to watching mediated images, and I was not used to the performers being able to see me back. That for me as an audience member. It was, I felt like it almost as bad as if I was on stage. And like I said, at that time, I had a real problem with nerves when it came to being seen. So but that's really idiosyncratic. That was me, and it was a specific set of circumstances leading up to that in my life. So it's hard to say what the value is. Like, I think it depends on the person, the receiver of the message, or the performance. Some people, like I was when I was younger, might be more relaxed and conducive to the meaning held in a mediated performance than a live one. Some people might need that charge, that feeling that I can't quite put my finger on, that pulls the performance out of you. Also goes both ways. It pulls your reaction when you're an audience member. There's something, I'm actually a big fan. I've kind of switched camps. Now I love live performance more than mediated. But I think that it loses something. There's no question. And I think that I'm fine with people saying it's not performance, but it is something. And as far as whether it's more valuable or less valuable, I don't think anyone can put like a blanket answer on that. For me though, and I would say for me, live performance, it's new for me and I love it. And for me, it's more valuable. So the mediated performances, and as a performer preparing to mediated performance, it's just weak. It's weak sauce coffee. So
That's funny. You said something in there that just like really caught my I mean that's just caught my attention, right? And you said that when you first started watching live theater, for example, you said that it was a weird experience for you because you weren't used to the performance you weren't used to the performance watching you back, right?
Yeah.
As you were watching them, and do you think that was that something that you missed then? Like, is that part of what made this also strange? Is not having the audience watch you as you perform, or
Yep.
yeah, you think that was
Yeah,
missed a lot?
that's what I'm talking about. That capillary reaction. There was no pull. There was no sense of there's no going back once you've begun, and that counts for me a lot. Like I will hesitate and scrap the whole thing, even if I'm like 2 minutes till the end of the entire piece. Ah, flub, scrap, start again, and it's stilted and halting. The entire process is like I don't know, like a car with transmission trouble. Um, with the live performance, it flows for me. That was my experience as a performer. The experience of real time perception of what you're doing is, yeah, it's priceless. It as a performer, even and you're gonna mess up in small ways. You keep going, and once you have grokked that and suffused that meaning in yourself, and it's just natural. It's like a reflex. You it flows. And you can totally crash and burn at one part and just flow still. There's something about live performance that I, I hope I'm getting close to explaining it. I don't feel like I'm adequately putting it into words, but yeah, obviously, I mean, I prefer live. If we're going to do a performance, I prefer live.
Okay.
You don't. I don't think you have to be an actor to be a live performer in a lot of situations. You just have to be honest. You have to be emotive, and you have to be sincere. You don't have to be a professionally trained Juilliard actor or anything like that because you're not faking it. It's the opposite of acting. You're behind what you're doing, and yeah, you're not playing someone else's character. So it's different than acting for film. Your performance is yeah, that's how I see it. I guess you might be playing fictional characters. Like if you are doing a stage production, obviously you're going to be a fictional character, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same as film. So I guess a comparison between those two might be like within I don't know. That might be easier to see commonalities to compare. Whereas performance, like we were doing, you're actually trying to you're you're behind what you're saying. You know, it's originating with you. That's a whole different animal. Even if it's fictional, you know, your point is going to be personal. It's going to be something that you feel have feelings about, genuine feelings. So
Yeah, and do you
without
think
an
that
audience, that's hard to do.
you lose any of that when you do perform online? Like that last part you said about, whatever it is that you perform, it becomes personal, whether it's fiction or not, right? Like, do you think you lose any of that if we start performing online?
I do, yeah. I mean, I wasn't performing online for the final performance for PE. I mean, I did that in camera and just submitted it, the clip. Um, I wouldn't call it performance for the CDC thing I did. I could have done that better. I wish I did. Like, I had to actually keep referring to my script, which is not good form. But and also I was limited to this. It was doing it from this space. I threw a blanket over my shelf. That was about the only difference. So I was in a chair reading from a script way too often. I could have fixed that by memorizing it. But even if I had done that, if I was able to keep eye contact with the camera, it would have been keeping eye contact with the camera, not really the squares on the screen below the camera, if that makes sense. I don't think there's any way to avoid losing something. Even let's say that hypothetically we had like a three-dimensional surround virtual reality or a Fahrenheit 451 television set that we lived inside of, we you'd still lose something. I don't think you could simulate the vibe.
Okay, it's interesting to hear that because obviously, like, whether we want it or not, I mean, it's just like the ensemble now and any other performance group literally across the country doesn't have a choice, right? Like, we're just like they're stuck doing things online. And I guess sort of in that same vein, I sort of want to move on to this next sort of I guess this next question. It's just sort of closing the show a little bit here.
Mm.
I guess what I wanted to ask you was, now that we all know that this next performance is online and that these students are experiencing what they're experiencing now, granted, we don't know those experiences all too well, right? Because we're not there with them. Um, but is there anything, any sort of advice, or maybe just any sort of information that you think these students deserve to know as they're working towards an online show?
First of all, don't listen to what I just said in the last question because it was rather discouraging. So what I would say is, no, seriously, on that though, I don't mean to discourage. There is something lost, but that doesn't mean you don't push forward and innovate. I guess that would be the best advice I could give is I'm saying this prior to any innovation that I or others have conducted. I just say any innovation prior to the innovations that are to come. This is a time for innovating. This is time for thinking in chaos, for reacting to things, for thinking on our feet and trying new things. In a way, that's an opportunity. But what we put together with Anthony's help and with our class collaborating, which actually went pretty seamlessly now that I think of it, that could have been a lot more. There was a lot of room. There was a lot of moving parts there. There was a lot of room for malfunction. And it was pulled off really well. So I think that's why I want to say there's not been any innovation so far. A lot of innovation went into what was pulled off to achieve that. And I guess this is almost an opportunity to re-explore what it is to perform with certain new constraints. I guess that's the puzzle. It's like set before you. Here's your new constraints. Here's the older model. Synthesize these, make it work, and make it shine. I think you could see that as an opportunity as opposed to a hindrance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's actually a really wonderful thing to not only to say, but I guess for a lot of people to hear is that obviously like it still kind of blows that you have to do this online when it's a whole different experience in person, but to know that you guys went through this as well, where you got to experience both sides, right? Doing it in person and having to switch everything online, and making the assumption that a lot of the performances had to change to fit this new format for you guys. With this new group, I think it is really cool that they are given this space and time, I guess, obviously with safety first, but like given the space and time to explore new things and try new things, and you're right, redefine what performing is, because it's different now, whether you want it or not, it's different, right? And so yeah, I don't think any of that was discouraging. Like even the things you said before that wasn't discouraging. It's just like, that's the truth. It's just an experience. It's the experience that you had, right? And I think it's important for people to listen to that and know that I guess moving forward, they just have to adapt and continue to adapt and just put something out there. And I think that's what's really exciting about it for me, at least. It's like seeing it from the outside in. It's just wondering what's going to become of this new performance and how it's going to differ from what happened last semester, or even with the semesters that were in person. So again, real quick, I just want to say, just closing the show now here. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Mark, for coming on. I feel like we've been wanting to get you on the show for for about 10 episodes already.
Wow.
But it's finally worked out. Again, this is a super short episode, which I don't think was too short, I hope. But super short episodes just sort of discussing that little transition from in-person performing to online performing, just because I think that we're finally catching up with the times, and it's good to understand what it is that's happening right now with performance ensembles all across the nation.
Yeah.
And it was a pleasure having you, and I can't wait to have you on again in the next episodes. So just real quick, again, thank you so much for joining in on the CSUN Performance Ensemble Presents a Conversation with. My name is not Jefferson Denham, and it is not Samantha Garcia. And over here we have Mark. Mark, you want to say anything else before?
Yeah, I want to say thank you before I lose that opportunity. Thank you so much for contacting me and letting me reconnect with you. It feels good to talk to old friends from PE, and yeah, I'm hoping to get involved again when there's like a room for me to play as a support role or creative input. I'm I miss it. I really miss the collaboration. I miss working with people to produce something creative.
Yeah,
One of
and that's the beauty of performance, huh? All right. Well, again, thank you so much, everybody who's tuning in and who has tuned in. We will see you next week with a different set of hosts, I believe, because things are getting wild. But thank you so much.